Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Aaron Greenberg. I am the Chief of Staff in the Microsoft Devices Group. And if you're like me, you've been just completely captivated and enamored with the work of Simon Sinek. In fact, it's been fascinating to see people walk in and just talk about how many people are huge fans of his. And we get to see a lot of speakers, but I think today is really, really unique and really special. So for me, it was a true honor when they asked me to introduce Simon and welcome him to the Microsoft Research Visiting Speaker Series. And for me, Simon has been an inspiration. What I love about his work is his ability to really start and spark great thinking, which for me and so many people is it's like that light bulb going off in your head. And he not only gets you thinking, but he really gets you to challenge your assumptions and provides deep insights into how great leaders and how great teams function and inspire people. And so today we have Simon here to talk about his latest book, which is called Leaders Eat Last. If you are not familiar with the book or have it, it is also available in the corner, along with Start With Why, which I know many of you like me have read. Simon's been nice enough to agree to stay afterwards and sign copies of the book as well. Leaders Eat Last, why some teams pull together and some teams don't. And I've been on teams that pull together and teams that don't. So I think it's really fitting time to have him here. Some great learnings on how we can build and form high-functioning teams. Some deep insights into how humans work, our emotions, how we connect, how we interact. And these are really key ingredients to creating that environment where we can naturally trust each other and cooperate. Simon, in addition to being a best-selling author, now his TED Talks, if you have seen them, he now is the second most viewed TED Talk of all time, which is very impressive. And if you've seen his work, you can understand why. So with that, please welcome and please give a warm welcome for Simon Sinek.
Thanks very much. So the intention is to talk about the book, but I think I'll just wax philosophical, some of which will be in the book and some of which won't. I think it's both exciting and depressing that messages like mine have an audience. I talk about really simple things like how to be fulfilled, and like how to do things that inspire us, and how to work for a company that sort of gets the best out of us and makes us feel good while they're doing it. And it's kind of upsetting that people are even wanting to hear that, meaning that there's a demand for it. But that also presents the most remarkable opportunity in the world, which means there's an opportunity for us to change the way work is done so that all of those things are not the exception, but rather the rule. It is the exception when somebody says, I love my job. So you meet somebody at a bar, he's like, what do you do? Oh, I love my job. Oh, you're so lucky, right? It's like that should be something special, is remarkable. And so the amazing thing is that ability to say, I love my job, I love what I do, is actually not that complicated to find. And not ironically, it has nothing to do with the work that we do. It has everything to do with the people with whom we work. And you don't even have to like the people with whom you work. That's the most amazing thing of all. If you think about it, in the military, there are people who are willing to risk their lives for people they don't even like. We don't even like to give up credit for things, So what is it that creates an environment in which people care about each other so much that they would risk their lives for people that they don't even like, right? Sometimes. This is remarkable to me. Human beings in all their complexity and all of the nonsense and all the messiness, what drives us is kind of simple. And this is what I like to research and learn about and write about, which is if you understand the very basic mechanics of this machine called the human being, it becomes fairly obvious as to what conditions in which the machine will perform well and in what conditions the machine will not perform well. Very simply, our machine is a social machine. We are social animals, and we respond to the environment we're in. That's it. Good people are capable of doing very bad things if they're in the wrong environment. And people who society may have given up on, if you put them in the right environment, are capable of performing remarkable, remarkable things. This is the job of leadership, which is to make that environment. The leader sets the tone, and the tone that is set will determine how we respond accordingly. And again, we are relatively simple in our motivations. If you go back to the Paleolithic era, when Homo sapien first stepped foot on the planet, about 50,000 years ago, there were other hominid species that existed at the same time, but we were the ones that survived. They died. We weren't necessarily the strongest, we weren't necessarily the fastest, and yet we've done quite well. Look at this remarkable world that we've built. One of the huge advantages we had and have is that we are social animals. And things like trust and cooperation are absolutely essential for our survival. They're not just nice ideas. They're absolutely essential. You can imagine why. When we existed, when we lived in populations that never really got bigger than about 150 people, for 40,000 of the 50,000 years we've been on this planet, we never lived in populations bigger than 150 people. I understand scale presents some inherent problems. But you can understand the benefits of the group living. What it meant was I could fall asleep at night and trust that someone in my tribe would watch for danger. If I didn't trust the people in my tribe, I couldn't go to sleep. And this is not a very good system for survival or performance or anything, any other metric. It's the same at work. When we work with people with whom we trust, I don't need to double check your work. I don't need to see it before it goes out. You don't need my approval, right? When we have trust, we can let people go do their work, and even if they're subordinate, we don't need to double check or approve or anything. Things will happen because we trust them, because we all have each other's backs. We all have each other's interests in mind. The problem with things like trust and cooperation is that they are not instructions. I can't simply tell you, trust me. You can't simply ask people to trust you in your advertising, and you can't simply tell people, I want you to cooperate. Trust and cooperation are feelings, and this is the problem. So the question is, where do those feelings come from? Now again, we are pretty simple in our motivation and our constructions. You can imagine what color should I use? You can imagine what life must have been like in these Paleolithic times. It was a world filled with danger. All of these forces working extremely hard to kill us. Whether it was the weather or lack of resources, saber-toothed tiger, nothing personal, but all of these forces were working together to end our lives. And so, as tribal animals, we worked together and lived and worked amongst people around whom we felt safe. We felt like we belonged. And when we felt safe amongst the people with whom we lived and worked, the natural human response is trust and cooperation. It's just what happens. When we do not feel safe amongst the people with whom we work, however, the natural human inclination is cynicism, paranoia, mistrust, and self-interest. When we do not feel safe amongst the people with whom we work, if our leaders do not make us feel safe, we have no choice but to spend our own time and our own energy to protect ourselves from each other. When we do not fear each other, we naturally work together to face the dangers and seize the opportunities. It's the exact same thing in our modern business world. There are forces that are constant and beyond our control that are working to kill you, right? Maybe I'm exaggerating. But there are forces outside, things like the uncertainty of an economy, the ups and downs of a stock market, a new technology that might render a business model obsolete overnight, your competition that sometimes is trying to kill you. It's trying to destroy that product or put you out of business, but at the very minimum is trying to frustrate your growth and steal your customers. These forces are constant, and you have no control over them and never will. The only variable are the conditions inside the organization. And when those conditions are set in a manner that allows us to feel like we can trust and cooperate, we do. This is what leaders are supposed to do. There is an exact definition of leadership, and it is not my opinion. You know, I love all the books that come out and all the articles. What makes a great leader? What are the 5 things you need to be a leader? You need charisma, you need vision, you know, all of these things. I can tell you right now, those things are sometimes useful, but they're not essential. Not everyone has vision. Does that mean they're not allowed to be leaders? You know, some people have remarkable charisma and some people don't. Does that mean they will never lead? Of course, it's all nonsense. You can't manufacture these things. Some people are good strategic thinkers and some people are not. Some people are just naturally good at basketball and some people are not. There are skills, you can get better at them for sure, but you're either a visionary or you're not. These are not things that we can manufacture. In other words, they're not essential components for leadership. There's only one characteristic that I'm comfortable saying that all leaders must have to become leaders, and that's courage. Because leadership is hard, and it often requires sacrifice, and that it will happen, that you will have to put your interests, your comforts, your advantages aside so that others may gain. And that's sometimes really hard. In fact, standing up for others may mean that you might get your head chopped off. You know, a leader sometimes loses their job because they did the right thing, right? That comes with significant risk. The choice to be a leader comes at significant risk. And this is why not everyone chooses to be a leader. Leadership has nothing to do with rank. It has nothing to do with the title you have on your card. Leadership is a choice. That's it. I know many, many people who sit in the senior echelons of a corporation and they are not leaders. They are authorities, and they have authority, and we do what they say because they have authority over us. But we would not follow them. I know many people who sit at the bottom of organizations who have no authority, but they are absolutely leaders. And the reason they are leaders is because they have made a choice. They have chosen to look after the person to the left of them, and they have chosen to look after the person to the right of them. It doesn't always mean they have to sacrifice their interests, but when it really counts, sometimes they choose to sacrifice their interests because it's in the interest of the person to the left and to the right of them. This is what leadership is. The role of leaders is not an accident either. It's built into our anthropology. It's part of our survival, the reason we have hierarchy and we have leaders. For those times when we lived in these austere conditions, we had a little bit of a problem. It was a very practical problem. There wasn't necessarily enough food to go around all the time. We didn't have supermarkets and cars. We just go get milk. Sometimes there was food readily available and sometimes not. Which meant if someone brought home some food and we're living in a population of up to 150, we would all rush in to eat because we're all hungry. And if you were lucky enough to be built like a football player, you could shove your way to the front of the line. If you were the artist of the family, you would get an elbow in the face. This is not a good system for cooperation. It's not a good system for survival because the odds are that if I got punched in the face this afternoon, I'm not going to wake the guy if I see danger. Bad system. And so we evolved into these hierarchical animals. We are constantly assessing and judging each other, who's alpha, who's beta. We are naturally hierarchical, and we always organize ourselves in hierarchies. So even in meetings, we go to a meeting like, everybody's equal, I want you guys to work together. It's not going to happen. We are never equals. We always assess, we always judge, we always allow some others some deference and the role of leadership, and some of us defer and sort of take a more subordinate role. It always happens. Not necessarily a bad thing. And again, the reasons are very practical based on our history. Because what would happen was, when we would assess someone as our alpha, and let me be clear, your capacity to be an alpha in any population is not an absolute. It is relative to the population you're in. So you might be a technologist or an engineer, and you might think you're the hottest, best, most fantastic engineer, and so does everybody else, and you walk around like this, and you go take a dance class, all of a sudden your ego's not so big anymore, right? We've all had the experience, right? We've all had the experience where we shake someone's hand and we're nervous. You're not the alpha, you know? Or when we can sense that someone's nervous meeting us, you're the alpha, right? It's a relative scale. So when we assess that someone in the population is alpha, we voluntarily step back and allow them first choice of meat and first choice of mate. We let them eat first. We may not get the best choice of meat, but we will eat eventually, and we didn't have to get an elbow in the face to get that food. Good system. To this day, we are very comfortable with paying deference and offering advantages to those more senior than us. There's not a single person in this room, zero, that has a problem with somebody more senior than you at the company making more money than you as a salary, having a bigger salary than you. It doesn't bother you at all. You might think they're an idiot, but it doesn't actually bother you that they make more money than you because they outrank you. No issue. It doesn't bother us at all that somebody more senior than us has a bigger office or a better parking space. It is of no issue whatsoever. In fact, we very often find ourselves deferring to our alphas, doing nice things for our alphas. We open doors for them and call them sir and ma'am and get them tea and they didn't even ask. I can promise you that if, as you were walking out of this room, if Steven Spielberg happened to walk in, you would hold the door open for him. And then you would go home and tell your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you'll never believe what happened today. I held the door open for Steven Spielberg. How come you don't advertise when you hold the door open for anybody else? It's because we're proud to sometimes do menial labor for those who we perceive as alphas in our system. We're proud to work for the groups that they lead and the organizations that they lead. By the way, you can't lead a company. You can run a company. You can only lead people. And so this whole idea of deference and how we always defer and sort of volunteer to these alphas is a natural human response, and it's a survival instinct, and it's all about this. And that's the point. None of those perks that you get for being the leader, for being the alpha, none of them come free. They come at a very high expense. You see, the group is not dumb. We expect that the person who's better fed, the person who's actually stronger or smarter than us, the person who has a higher self-confidence, has more self-confidence because of all our love and deference and hello sir and hello ma'am, and it actually boosts their self-confidence. We expect that this more confident, stronger, better fed person, when danger threatens the tribe, we expect them to rush towards the danger to protect us. That's the cost of leadership. That's why we gave you first choice of mate, because you might die. And we want to keep your genes in the gene pool. We're not stupid. And this is what it means to be a leader, the willingness to rush towards the danger to protect those in your care. It is a choice. You don't have to be a leader. It is a choice. If you don't like the costs of leadership, you may not accept the perks of leadership because they do not come for free. This is the reason why we are so viscerally offended by some of the banking CEOs have these disproportionate salaries and bonus structures. It's not the money that offends us. It's that we know deep inside us that they have violated the very definition of what it means to be a leader. They have accepted all of the perks and bonuses and benefits of being the leader, and yet they're not willing to make any of the sacrifices for the role that they have accepted. In other words, we know that they allowed their people to be sacrificed for them to keep their bonuses and perks and advantages. Worse, sometimes they chose to sacrifice their people to protect their bonuses and their perks. This is what so offends us. It's not the money. If I told you we're going to give a $150 million bonus to Nelson Mandela, does anyone have a problem with that? No. How about a $250 million bonus to Mother Teresa? Got an issue with that? No. It's not the money. It's not the money. It's that leadership is a choice. And in our modern day and age, unfortunately, many of the people who like to call themselves leaders are not leaders at all. They are authorities. That's all they are. And we have to do what they say because they have authority over us, but we would not follow them. And this is a problem. Because when we do not feel that they have our backs, when we do not feel safe working inside their organizations, they force us to spend our time and our energy to protect ourselves from them. And the organization itself suffers. It's what happens. It's ironic to me that organizations like your own, who want to drive innovation and ideas and new ways of thinking, would in the same breath lay people off because they didn't make the numbers in 1 year. you do realize that those two concepts are completely counterproductive. It's like talking to a CEO and I ask, what are your priorities? They say, we have two priorities, innovation and efficiency. Not possible. There is nothing efficient about innovation. Try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, succeed. Not efficient. It takes you throw money to try things out. You can be innovative or you can be efficient. You can be efficient and hope for innovation, and you can be innovative and hope for efficiency. There's always going to be one subordinate to the other. Not bad, not better or worse, but let's not kid ourselves and think that they can be equal grounds. They cannot. It is impossible. But worse, an organization that claims or hopes or desires or aspires to be innovative must, at every expense, commit themselves to the safety of their people. Because only when we feel safe and protected will we voluntarily commit ourselves to the support of each other and the advancement of the vision. There are very simple ways to do this. Here are just a few. Great leaders would never sacrifice the numbers, would never sacrifice the people to save the numbers. Great leaders would sacrifice the numbers to save the people. And so when we live in a day and age where our leaders are so comfortable sending you home to tell your spouse and your kids, I'm sorry, I no longer have an income because the company had to make its numbers for the year. Forget about the people who lost their jobs. What about the people who didn't get laid off? How inspired do you think they feel to come back to work every day? How safe do you think they feel? Do you think we're going to give our best knowing at the next time if the company doesn't make its numbers? By the way, which may or may not have anything to do with us. Remember all of those outside dangers, the ups and downs of technologies, the ups and downs of stock markets, the ups and downs of economies? You think when you have a bad year, you sit your children down and say, kids, it's been a bad year. We have to get rid of one of you. Or worse. Or worse. I got to keep my Mercedes. And so it's either you or the car, and we've picked you. Right? No, we tighten the belt. We work together. We figure out ways to make it happen, to see it through the hard times. We cannot judge the quality of a crew based on how they perform in good times. We judge the quality of the crew by how they perform in rough waters. And unfortunately, we throw our crew overboard when we hit rough waters. What makes them want to commit to see the ships make it through the rough waters? What they do is they sit down and watch their own backs because nobody else is going to watch my back. There is no innovation in a group like that. There is no innovation in a group like that. Backstabbing, idea stealing, plenty of that. Nothing personal, got to look after numero uno. So number one, people come first. Numbers are always subordinate to people. Numbers will not rescue you in hard times. People will. Numbers will not come up with new ideas. People will. Numbers are not innovative. People are. That's number one. Another one which is really, really, really easy is honesty. It's really easy to be honest. Just tell the truth. And if you tell the truth on a regular basis, we will say you have integrity. That's all it means. These are really basic concepts. So for example, if somebody calls and a secretary picks up the phone and says, Dave's on the phone, and you say, tell him I'm not here. You've just sanctioned lying inside your organization. That's what you've done. You have said that when it suits you, even if these lies are small, you may tell lies. That was dishonest. I went to visit Quantico Marine Base, where the Marine Corps selects their officers. And on the day I was there, true story, I was waiting in a conference room for the colonel in charge of OCS to come and give us a briefing on the base about OCS, about the selection process. And he arrived late. Marines don't ever arrive late. And he showed up late. He came in and apologized. He said, I'm sorry, we've had an incident with one of our Marines. So I go, what happened? You know? He said, well, we're considering throwing him out of OCS, which means throwing him out of the Marine Corps. And I'm thinking, what law did he break? What did he do? So I said, what did he do? And the colonel said, he fell asleep on watch. And I said, that's it? He fell asleep on watch in the woods of Virginia. You know? I'm like, you guys are tough. He said, and then he explained. He said, no, you don't understand. He said, when we asked him about it, he denied it. When we asked him about it again, he denied it again. And only when we gave him irrefutable proof did he say, quote, I want to take responsibility for my actions. The problem we have, he said, is we believe you take responsibility for your actions at the time you perform your actions, not at the time you get caught. We have another Marine who fell asleep on watch. He admitted it. He got punished. We have no problem with him. And he went on to explain, he says, you have to understand, I cannot put this Marine in a leadership position where they're responsible for the lives of other Marines, because if they are in a combat situation and his Marines doubt for 1 second that the words coming out of his mouth are anything but the truth, if they believe for 1 second that the words he is speaking are only to make himself look better or cover his own ass, trust will break down in the whole group and people will die. Now, we are not in life and death situations, but the way our minds interpret information that is given to us is in terms of life and death. This is why we don't trust politicians. They tell us the things we want to hear. We don't prima facie disagree with anything we've been told, but we know that they don't believe the things that they're saying. And so we as human beings, we're very, very smart, and this is always ingrained in us. We always make sure just to keep a safe distance from anybody who we don't believe is honest, because if we were to find ourselves in a life and death situation with them, you know what, if I had to gamble, I'm going to say, won't go with them. When someone is honest, they're willing to tell us good news, they're willing to tell us bad news, they're willing to be upfront with them. Even if it's news that we don't want to hear, even if it's not in our interest, we're okay with it. We actually trust them. Hey, listen, I got to be honest with you. Your performance has been really bad these days. I love this. We're always taught to give sandwiches. Give them the good news before you get to the bad news, right? So give them something general and generic that they don't believe anyway. Hey, you're really smart. And on this one project that you did that you really completely, like, it's really specific when they give us the negative, right? In other words, we didn't believe the positive in the first place. We knew they were just biding their time to get to the negative. Honesty. I'll give you another example of honesty and how we respond to it, okay? We've all had this happen. You get an email that says to you, Dear Simon, I'd get that, you wouldn't get that. If you get that, send it to me. Dear Simon, haven't talked to you in years, hope you're doing well. Congratulations on all your success, it's really amazing. Would love to catch up and get a cup of tea sometime. By the way, if you could go to this website, I'm trying to raise money for a project I'm doing. I would really appreciate it if you could vote for me or tweet it out. Thanks a lot, Dave. And what do you do when you get something like that? You're like, you know? Right? Now, what if we simply reverse the information? Dear Simon, I'm trying to raise money for this project I'm doing. Would really appreciate if you could click on the link and vote for me, and maybe even tweet it out. Haven't seen you in years, hope you're doing really well. Congratulations on all your success. Would love to get together with you for a cup of tea sometime, Dave. In other words, tell me the reason you sent me the email. Right? The niceties are fine, but that's not the reason you sent me the email. It was dishonest. It was disingenuous. Honesty is such a simple thing, right? It's such a simple thing, and when it is afforded to us, we respond with loyalty and trust and commitment and devotion and loyalty, because why wouldn't we? By telling me accurate information, it helps me better survive. I like that, I appreciate that. I'm going to stand next to the honest one. Honesty is king. Hard, but important. And if we screw up, be honest about the screw up. I want you to know I wasn't honest with you. I was in a weird position and I should have told you the truth and I didn't. I got embarrassed and then I made it worse. I don't know, I'm sorry. I'm ashamed. You know, like we can be honest about the failings even. We can accept punishments. Great organizations, if people screw up, you can be punished, but it doesn't mean you'll lose your job. If we fear that we will lose our jobs, we don't work in safe organizations. If we fear getting in trouble, that's okay. I mean, we fear getting in trouble from our parents. We don't fear that they're going to throw us out of the house, right? Same thing, same thing. Here's another thing that is easy to do and is a component of leadership, right? allowing others to fail. My friend David Marquet, who wrote an amazing book called Turn the Ship Around, check it out, Marquet, was a captain of a submarine, nuclear-powered Los Angeles-class fast attack sub. And Marquet believed, like many of us do, that his credibility as a leader was closely tied to his competence, to his intelligence. You know, we believe that we have to know as much or more than those in our report because this is what gives us credibility as leaders, right? And so, in typical Marquet fashion, when he was assigned to one of the great honors of his career to be captain of his own submarine, the USS Olympia, he spent a year learning every button, every switch, every pipe, every valve of the submarine. He went through the dossiers of his crew. He knew everything about his crew. He was going to be prepared, and he was going to know as much or more than everybody else on board because he was the captain now. He had to. He had no choice. 2 weeks before he took command of the Olympia, he got a phone call that says, yeah, you're not going to be the captain of the Olympia. You're going to be the captain of the Santa Fe. It was a slightly newer submarine, still an Los Angeles-class submarine, but Marquet realized because it was slightly new, some of the things were different. And he didn't want anybody to know that he didn't know everything. And so he kind of kept it to himself and pretended he knew everything. But that's okay. You know, he's a smart guy, he's a competent guy, he obviously trusted him enough to be captain. He was fine. Then there was another little wrinkle. Where the Olympia was the best-rated crew in the United States submarine fleet, the Santa Fe was the worst-rated crew in the submarine fleet. They ranked last or close to last in almost every readiness measurement in the entire that the Navy had, right? But Marquet figured, that's okay. I have a bad crew. It's all right. I'm going to be a good leader. If I give good orders, I'll have a good ship. And if I give great orders, I'll have a great ship. So they set sail. And about 2 or 3 days into being out there, you know, when they got ready, he was like barking orders, get ready for this, get ready for that. And everybody was following his orders, and off they went out to sea. It was a great feeling, everybody, when they do what you say, right? And about 2 or 3 days out, they were submerged, and they decided to run an exercise. So they turned off the reactor manually and pretended that they were having a meltdown. And they ran the boat on battery power. It's called EPM, right? And Marquet decided he wanted to add a little tension, see how well they would do with more difficult situation. Then he gave a simple order, ahead 2/3. And what that means is run the boat 2/3 its maximum speed. To his side was his navigator, who was the second in command at the time in the bridge, and he was also the most experienced sailor on board. He'd had 2.5 years aboard the Santa Fe, and he repeated the order, ahead 2/3, and nothing happened. And Seaman Jones, junior sailor, sitting at the controls, was squirming, literally squirming in his seat. So Marquet peers out from the side of his periscope and says, Seaman Jones, what's the problem? And Seaman Jones replies, sir, there is no 2/3 setting. Apparently on this slightly newer Los Angeles, there was no 2/3 setting on the EPM. So he turns to his navigator and he says, did you know this? And the guy goes, mm-hmm. He said, then why did you give the order? He said, because you told me to. And that's when Marquet realizes he's aboard a ship he doesn't understand, and he has a crew that's trained for compliance. It's not like you can just turn around and ask for a new boat or change your crew out. We in the private sector think that we have an advantage because we can hire and fire people. You're assuming that we're hiring and firing the right people. We think that when things don't work, just change the people. Get rid of the weak links. Marquet didn't have this. This was his crew. He's stuck with it. And it's not like in anything else in the world. In submarines, there's no one person who dies. You either all live or you all die. That's it. Those are your options on a submarine. And so Marquet is forced to literally re-examine everything he understands about leadership because bad things will happen if this is the way it goes. And so one of the things he realized is he had a permission-based society aboard his boat. Sir, permission to dive to 400 feet. Permission granted. Aye, sir, diving to 400 feet. In other words, all the authority, all of the accountability lies with the person in charge, with the captain. If something goes wrong, the captain allowed it to happen. Marquet banned the words permission to aboard his boat. And he replaced them with, I intend to. The hierarchy is not affected at all. The chain of command is not affected at all. The difference is psychological. I intend to dive to 400 feet. All right. All the accountability lies with the person performing the action now. And so what started to happen was people took their jobs more seriously. And they started to ask each other for help because things went wrong. And instead of wanting to get permission from the boss, now, if the boss asked a question, you wanted to be able to have the answer. Which means when the boss says, did you check the depths? Sometimes he asked and sometimes he didn't. He said, did you check the depths? Of course I checked the depths. What are the depths? 400. You know? In other words, you could never be caught not knowing before you made a decision. Accountability went up. There are lots of other things that Marquet did, which he talks about in his book. Within a short period of time, the crew of the Santa Fe became the highest rated crew in naval history. Not that year, not the submarine fleet, in naval history. Same people, same equipment. It's not the people, it's the environment. It's always the environment. The people are fine. It's always the environment. And this is what leadership is. One of the things Marquet realized is in most organizations, the people at the top have all of the authority, but none of the information. And the people who are actually performing the jobs have all the information, but none of the authority. And in most organizations, they try to get the information up. No, push the authority down. This is what creates great organizations. And what that does is it makes us feel that our work and our lives have value. We want to be given the opportunity to make mistakes. We want to be given the opportunity to work hard and have responsibility. It feels good to work hard, to have responsibility for something. If somebody else, we've all had the experience, sometimes junior, sometimes senior in our jobs. I can remember in my own career, I used to have a boss who did the opposite. And I would write something, and she would cover it in red pen and tell me to make her changes. And so I'd go make her changes. I'd come back, and she'd cover it in red pen and tell me to make her changes. And at some point, I stopped caring about the quality of my first draft because I knew she was just going to change it all to whatever she wanted anyway. No longer felt valuable or valued. As opposed to telling me the macro issues she had. This is not clear. I know what you're trying to say, but it doesn't come across. Try again. Responsibility. Accountability. I remember the first time that somebody gave me accountability. I had to produce something that I had to send out to the client. The norm was to show it to my boss before it went out to the client. Except this time, he decided to leave early. And I said, well, do you want me to email it to you before it goes out? And he goes, no. Good night. Make sure it goes out tonight. Bye. Now, I knew what good was, and I knew what had to be done, and guess what? He was fine. And I worked hard. I wanted to do it right. One of the things great leaders do is they allow us to try and fail. And one of the things Marquet talks about is the importance of training and the importance of practice and the importance of small projects. Because you can punch a hole in the side of the ship above the waterline and you fix it. It costs some money, whatever. But you do that over and over again so that you don't punch a hole in the side of the ship below the waterline. In training, metrics are supposed to go down, because you want people to try hard and fail and find out where the line is. In combat training, you want them to get shot, because you want them to find where getting shot happens. You don't want to outscore everybody else in training. It's ridiculous, right? This is the time to push the limits. Or give people little projects that at the worst, think about what we do for a living, right? Nobody here is looking for a cure for cancer or working in an ER. The worst thing we can do, the absolute worst, is lose a multi-billion-dollar corporation some money. And not enough that will get noticed. And if it is enough to get noticed, it won't put you out of business. Like seriously, death and destruction and Armageddon are nowhere to be seen. That's the worst. And so when we have leaders that understand that and allow us to try and fail and understand that if we screw it up, it's okay, the ship's not going to sink, now try again. Let's sit down and talk about maybe what you would like to do differently next time. I want you to learn, I want you to try again. Kind of like what we do with our kids. And that's the final point. The closest analogy I can give to you about what leadership is parenting. Think about what makes a great parent. You know? First of all, not having kids is a better life. You get a bigger house, you take nicer vacations, you can get the car you want, not the car you have to get, right? Much more sleep, right? Yet we choose, for some reason, to have children. We choose to make these sacrifices because in time, it's kind of worth it to see this little thing grow up and make something of themselves that we got to look after. It's kind of worth it. The problem with leadership, the problem with parenting, is they're both like exercise, is they cannot be measured in small, discrete chunks. I can give you a compelling presentation about the importance of exercise and it'll change your life and improve the quality of your life and help you live longer. And you'll believe me and you'll go to the gym and you'll come back and you'll look in the mirror and you will see nothing. But you go the next day and you will come back and you will look in the mirror and you will see nothing. And worse, you're in pain. And so you have no metrics to show there's any value to anything I've told you, so you stop. But if you can stick with it, after 3 months, you look at an old picture of yourself and you're like, I can't believe I ever looked like that. I can't believe it. Leadership and parenting are the same. You have no idea if you're being a good parent on a daily basis. None. In fact, sometimes you're a bad parent. But you kind of have a sense of what it should be, and you stick with it, and there are these little glimmers that you get that make you proud that you're kind of doing the right thing and that the sacrifice is worth it, like the little things that the kids do. But you won't actually see a return on your investment for like 30 years. You know, some of our parents are still waiting for us. Right? Leadership is the same. I have no way of measuring that you're being a good leader on a daily basis. Even the best leaders are sometimes terrible leaders on a daily basis. There's no good metric. The problem is it's very hard to measure in short, discrete packets, but it's very easy to measure over distance, over time. That's the problem. Good leadership is obvious. You measure it in things like churn. You know, what's the average lifespan of your employees? I love reading all these reports that say, well, the trend is that people are spending less and less time at their jobs now, and maybe it's because they're looking for more adventure. No, it's because they don't feel safe, and why would they stick around? There's no loyalty. It's not a good trend. It's a symptom. Parenting. Think about what a great parent is. A great parent is willing to sacrifice, give of themselves, discipline when necessary, provide opportunities, provide education. Also, this young little thing can grow up and achieve more than they thought they ever could for themselves. What's a great leader? Somebody who's willing to sacrifice and give of themselves and provide opportunities, education, discipline when necessary, sometimes help them up, sometimes make them get up themselves, all so they'll grow up and build confidence and achieve things I couldn't even achieve for myself. Same thing. There's a photograph in the New York Times a bunch of months ago. Do you remember those shootings in Kenya? And the amazing thing was there was a photographer who was on the scene. Usually we see the aftermath, right? And this particular one, there was a photographer in the mall. And so we got to see pictures of what was going on. And there's one photograph, you can look it up, it's online. There's one photo, Taylor Hicks is the photographer's name, not the same Taylor Hicks. There's a photograph of a mother lying on top of her child. Okay, now think about that. At the sound of a gun, it's a mother's instinct to throw herself onto her child, potentially risking her own life to ensure that the life of this young, precious thing will survive her. Now, on other days, mom gets to do what mom says because I'm the mom. And sometimes mom takes the liberties and enjoys the liberties of being the leader and being the one in charge. But when it matters, when the child's life, survival are at stake, there's no question what a good mother does. They throw themselves on top of their child, no question asked, even at personal sacrifice. That's called leadership. That's what our leaders do. They can enjoy the trappings, enjoy the perks, enjoy the parking spaces, enjoy the money. Nobody says you have to give them up. In fact, we would be upset if you gave them up because it's our pleasure to do these things for you. Can you imagine if Steven Spielberg, you made him a cup of coffee, he said, I can make my own cup. It actually would feel bad. Like we want to do these things. It brings us joy to do these things. Just like it brings our kids joy to make us proud, and it gives us joy to make our leaders proud. We want to do right by them. But we do so with the knowledge that they would sacrifice themselves for us. Back in the Marine Corps, this idea of leadership is viewed as a responsibility, not as a rank. You will never hear these words spoken in the Marines. You will never hear the words, I am a leader. I believe I have what it takes to be a leader. I aspire to be a leader. Those words do not exist. Here are the words they speak. I'm a leader of Marines. I believe I have what it takes to be a leader of Marines. I aspire to be a good leader of Marines. In their own vernacular, they view leadership as a responsibility to another human being and not a rank to be attained. It's the same for us. You're not a leader. You're a leader of people. And to say I am a leader is false. I'm a leader of people. I aspire to be a leader of people. I believe I have what it takes to be a leader of people. I want to be the best leader of people I can possibly be. And we are reminded every time we speak the words that our responsibility is to another person. Like the word parent. I am a parent. Inherent in that word is that there's a child. You can't call yourself a parent without a child. I'm a parent of a child. It comes with certain responsibilities inherent, as does leadership. And so this manifests in some funny ways in the Marine Corps. If you go to any chow hall anywhere in the world, on any Marine base, what you will see is they will line up in rank order during chow time. Most junior man eats first, most senior man eats last. It is not in any rule book, and no one tells them they have to. It happens organically because of the way they simply view the responsibility of leadership. That I, as the leader, like a parent, would let my child eat before I eat. That's just what we do. And so that's one of the ways it shows up. I was told a true story. I was told a story of a Marine officer who was deployed, and they were eating with the group, and that officer made sure that his men ate first, as is the custom in the Marine Corps. And they ran out of food. The officer didn't get to eat. So when they went out back into the field, all of his men brought him some of their food so that he may eat. This is what happens. When we as leaders commit to the safety of our people will give us their blood, sweat, and tears, and they will make their own sacrifices to ensure that we are kept safe and to ensure that our visions are advanced. We cannot sit here with our arms folded and simply complain that our leadership doesn't look after us, that our leadership doesn't get it, that they would sooner sacrifice us to save the numbers and they would never sacrifice the numbers to save us, that they listen to Wall Street, they don't put people first, they claim they drive innovation, but they're not creating an environment that would create innovation. We cannot complain because we must be the leaders we wish we had. We have a person to the left of us and we have a person to the right of us that we can take responsibility for. Sure, you don't love your job, but do they? Are you committing yourself to ensuring that they feel happy, that they feel safe, that they have the job they love, that they feel like they're learning, that they feel they have opportunity? We have entire sections in the bookshop called self-help. We have no sections called help others. And yet the science is clear. Our own sense of happiness, our own sense of fulfillment, our health, and indeed the success of the organization itself are tied entirely to our willingness to serve those in our tribe, to look after those who we would call brother and sister, which we don't do in companies. We have colleagues. In the military, they have brothers and they have sisters. We don't always like our brothers and sisters, but my goodness, you threaten my brother or my sister and you got to deal with me. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have time for questions. Yes, in the back.
It's a very interesting example you've taken from Marines. Could you sort of enlighten why?
Can you speak up?
Could you throw some light on why organizations like the armed forces, which have very low tolerance for challenging authority, have such great leaders, as opposed to corporations where there is a potential to challenge authority, yet the quality of leadership isn't as high?
So the question was, why is it that the military has great leaders where they have low tolerance for challenging authority, where in corporations where we have culture of challenging authority, we seem to lack good leaders, or there seems to be a dwindling number. When you talk about challenging authority, what are you talking about? You know, when we're talking about challenging conventional thoughts and conventional ideas, when we're talking about taking responsibility, in the military, and especially in the Marines, they're expected and they're taught to think for themselves. And the idea of hierarchy is very much geared to something they call commander's intent. right? In other words, the commander tells us what they need to achieve, but they will not meddle in how it will be achieved. The problem in our corporations is we're told what they want to achieve and how we're going to do it. And so the opportunity to challenge authority is obvious, is because you're giving us something to challenge. Whereas in a well-running unit, the commander will say, I need to take that hill. And it's for the lower level leadership to figure out how to take that hill. And then it's for the level of leadership beneath that to figure out, okay, this is how we're going to do our component of it. And so there's a lot of respect given to the layers of leadership. Here, not so much. By here, I mean corporations, not so much. And so it also goes to the concept of humility. The best definition of humility I ever heard was given by Bob Gaylor, the former Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. He said, do not confuse humility with meekness. Humility is being open to the ideas of others. And I love that. You know, you can have the biggest ego in the room. Being humble is not like, oh no, it's not me. You know, that's not humble. Humble is when somebody says, I got an idea, you go, let's hear it. And actually be willing to hear what they have to say. That's humility. And so great leaders have the humility that they may not have all the answers and they don't know how to get there. And it also goes to a question of priorities, right? Which is based on bonus structures. We are largely incentivized to grow a number within the year. That's how we get our incentives. And we're not incentivized to create something stable that will last 100 years. And so what you have is a lot of large, relatively unstable organizations. Well, that's what they wanted. That's what they got. We're fast growing. Awesome. It's good for the year, right? This is. We were just talking about this at lunch. This is the difference between. This is the folly of the stock market, right? Make sure this is on the camera. I'll make sure it's on the camera. I'll do it in the middle. Okay. This, if you look at like General Electric in the 80s and 90s, this is what their stock chart looks like. So if you were lucky enough to sell at the right time, you would have made, I don't know, 1,800% on your money, if you invested in the early 80s. This is not investing. This is gambling. This is investing. We invest in our children. We invest in education. Right? We invest in something that we don't see the result in a year. Gambling is about hope. I hope this works out. It's about betting. I bet on your new product. I bet on your new CEO. I bet on your reorg. I bet on your acquisition. I invested in you because I hope that decision that you just made today, I bet it's going to work. Oh. Costco was criticized by Wall Street year after year after year by stupidly prioritizing employees and customers and ignoring the shareholder. If you had invested $1 in General Electric and $1 in Costco the day Costco went public, which was December of 1985, you would have, compared to today, you would have enjoyed a 600% return on your investment in General Electric. You would have enjoyed a 600% return on your investment in the S&P 500. And you would have enjoyed a 1,200% return on your investment in Costco. That's investing. If you were lucky enough to get out of GE at the right time, you would have made a little more. But that's not investing, that's gambling. I got no issue with it. I got no issue with gambling, and I got no issue with taking bets. Just call it like it is. We're betting versus we're investing. So if we're saying we're doing something for our shareholders, we don't have shareholders anymore, we have share squatters, right? Think about it. Just let's think about this for 1 second. We're going to take counsel from a disinterested outside party that when we do well, they'll invest in us anyway, and if we do badly, they're not loyal and they're not going to stick with us. I'll stop there. And the joke is, that's better for the shareholder. And it's stable. And it's innovative. And people love working there. And they look after each other. And they don't spend tons of money on churn because nobody quits. It's good. Forget about idealism. Forget about soapboxes. I'm talking business. I'm talking the free market. This is better for the free market. But I digress. Yes?
Hate to interrupt your flow.
No, I know.
So a couple weeks ago, we had theoretical physicist Michio Kaku come here as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. Talked a lot about the intersection of brain-machine interfaces, and I was wondering, based on your 99U talk, where you focus a lot more kind of on the neurobiological reasons why these things happen, where do you see kind of the future of that going? Will we evolve as companies to be better and figure out if we can actually see, scientifically what's happening, or do you think we'll kind of continue to face these same problems?
Oh, such hubris. Yeah, we're not that smart. We I love, companies do competitive analyses, and yet it's the competition they didn't see that always gets them. It's the unsuspecting technology they didn't even know existed that comes up. MySpace was busy studying Friendster when Facebook showed up out of nowhere, right? And so we don't know. That's the point. We're so proud to believe that we've considered everything. The space shuttle blew up because of a bolt, okay? Things go wrong all the time because of one idiot decision about somebody who didn't see something. The housing crisis, mortgage-backed securities, the actuaries said that these have a 99% chance of success, because the 1% chance that the whole housing market would collapse at one time. So there was no plan for that 1% chance because it wasn't. That's the point. It's hubris. The human animal, this machine, is a legacy machine living in a very modern world. Nothing about us has changed in 50,000 years. Zippo. The way we interpret information, the way we make decisions, our drive to try and form trusting cooperative relationships, our need to feel safe, to feel valuable, to feel like we belong, all here it is. And yet we're forced to operate in a very, very different environment. And it produces some inherent problems. I've forgotten his name, but he's a really great biologist. He was explaining how back in those Paleolithic times, you know what the average life expectancy was? About 80, 85, 90. And there was no cancer, and there was no diabetes, and there was no heart disease. It was only with the rise of scale and industrialization, farming, did all the problems start to arise. And so we think that we're so advanced because we live to like 74 now, where in the Renaissance they died at like 35, right? But what we completely miss is that the ages were good and they went like this because we started short-circuiting this machine. And so now we've been able to compensate for some of the short circuits naturally and with medicines and things like that. But if we actually live good lives, where we have longer, trusting, beautiful relationships, happier people live longer. People who are in relationships live longer than single people. We're social animals. We need each other, right? So my belief is that no matter how smart we think we are, no matter how integrated we can make the human being in the computer, there is something that we won't see that will catch us by surprise, and it will break. All of this chips implanted in brains and stuff, I think it's cool. It won't work. I mean, come on, we can't even figure out the cell phone. It's pretty imperfect technology. My Bluetooth thing doesn't really work, so I don't really bother with it. Calls get dropped, and I got Verizon, and it's better than the others, and I still lose calls. Sometimes the calls aren't clear, sometimes I can't hear them. The handsets are kind of disposable. It's kind of junk technology. It's pretty good, not great, right? We don't build things to last anymore. So yeah, I think it's nice in theory. Yeah, it's good. They'll do some stuff, but it'll break.
So it's pretty easy, I guess, to identify if your team or organization is safe once you're there. Yeah. But when you're looking for a new team or looking for, changing jobs to another org, how do you identify if that place is a safe place?
So the question was, it's pretty easy to identify if your team is safe when you're in it. But if you need to change teams, how do you identify if it's safe? Great question. It's called dating. It's called making friends. It doesn't happen immediately, and you can't tell. You go on a first date, and it feels kind of good. And so you go on a second date, and it feels kind of good. And after 3 weeks, you're like, this is ridiculous, In other words, we make the decision to join teams, or we make hiring decisions too quickly sometimes. Had a couple, they met everybody on the team. We like them. Okay, now it didn't work out. It is our responsibility to assess the team we want to join based on their values and based on their beliefs. It's the concepts of why and the other things that I've written about. And there's some ways to figure that out. You know, for example, you have to know your own before you can assess others, obviously. But here's a great example. Someone will approach me and say, we want you to invest in our company, our little startup. I go, great. What's your exit strategy? They go, we have a 5-year exit strategy. I'm not interested. Because I'm not interested in things for short term. So there's little questions that I can ask. You know, who's in charge? Me. Who's your partner? I don't have one. I believe in mom and dad. I believe in CEO and COO. I believe in visionary and operator, working in concert to make it happen. When one person thinks they can do it all, not so much. So these are little things where I've learned over time to test my beliefs. But you have to take time. You have to get to know them. I'm a great believer in dating and getting to know somebody. And sometimes it's in the job. You never expect that you'll feel like you belong in the first week. It won't ever happen. 6 months minimum, sometimes longer. You know, like how long does it take to fall in love? Certainly not a week, we know that. But if you've been there for 7 years and you're not in love, it's time to move. Human relationships are human relationships, whether it's dating, whether it's work, whether it's sports, human relationships are human relationships. We're always looking for trust, we're always looking to feel safe. I guarantee you that almost every single person in this room is sitting next to somebody you chose to sit next to. Why is that? Why didn't you split up and sit somewhere else? And this is why we keep the empty seats blank. I know you guys don't know each other. Because it's like we go to the movies. We sit next to our friends and we leave an empty space, right? Because we feel we're driven by safety. We feel safe next to someone we know, and we feel uneasy next to somebody we don't know. Nothing personal. It's just the way we are. Same thing. So it takes time. It takes time. And I have no app for that. I got nothing that can speed up the human relationship. I do find it ironic, however. Considering I'm speaking out of turn, I might as well just go with the flow. I do find it ironic that companies like Google and Facebook and sort of all these social media companies invest huge sums of time and energy and money to figure out ways to organize their corporate culture so that people will cooperate better, and they have common eating so that people they can sit on benches together and common spaces to work together, all so that they can be much better at working together to produce a product that keeps us apart from each other. I just love the irony of that. You know, that they know what gets the best out of people is cooperation, so they can produce a product that leaves us not cooperating. I just love that. Yes?
If you find yourself in a place that you consider unsafe, is your best strategy exit?
No. The question was, if you consider yourself in a place that you feel unsafe, is the best strategy exit? Absolutely not. The best strategy is to step up. The best strategy is to be the leader you wish you had. The best strategy is to find someone you trust and say, we have each other, let's look after each other, but let's also commit to looking after everybody else. There's some good research on this as well. There was an article in HBR some time ago about how to deal with a toxic leader. And if you have a toxic leader, you can see this in dictatorships. Same idea, it's the same thing, right? So what dictators do is they seed paranoia and create separation amongst the people. Because dictators know that if the people come together, they're out. Dictators always fear the people. And that's because anthropologically, it's not the leader that has the power, it's the group that has the power. We're social animals. Leaders have power over us as individuals, but as a group, we control the leader. And so in toxic environments where you don't feel safe, very often what happens is an environment of fear and paranoia is created such that the people no longer help each other. They're too busy worrying about themselves. Maybe you have one friend who watches your back, but it's not enough. And so they maintain their control. And so what you want to do is break down these barriers and say, hey guys, all we have is each other. If we're going to be happy at work and we're going to survive this and we're going to do good things, we have to look after each other. And what the research shows is two things happen. One, this person becomes completely emasculated. They lose their power. And usually higher ups then start to notice. Because they are very good at managing up and pretty bad at managing down. You're welcome. Yes, in the back. Last question. Oh, wait, no, we'll go longer.
So how do you know, a leader, toxic, he or she may be, many times they project themselves on the situation,
yes.
real psychosis. in such a way that you don't realize?
Great question. The question was, how can you tell if someone's toxic? Because sometimes they say the right things, and they present themselves as these wonderful leaders. Again, time. And this is the importance of consistency, right? There's a difference between consistency and intensity. And consistency always wins, right? You cannot be healthy by doing a cleanse once a month. I'm going to cleanse. No, it doesn't work, right? You know what keeps you healthy? Being healthy every day. Going to the gym and working out for 10 hours doesn't make you healthy. Doing a little bit every day makes you healthy, right? So consistency is always king over intensity, which is why reorgs don't work, because it's an intense... Touch a nerve, did I? Reorgs, we end up fearing the reorg. And they end up doing all these PowerPoints and bringing in all these outsiders to tell us how much better it's going to be. And we all go, okay. And they end up spending all of their time trying to convince us that it's good. It doesn't work. Because then we end up, it's like moving a bulldozer towards a brick wall because we need to move the brick wall from here to there. The bulldozer's the reorg. We're the brick wall. Yeah, I know we need to move over there, and I'm sure this might work, but I just see a bulldozer coming, not feeling very cooperative. However, if somebody says, look, slowly is how we're going to do it, and we don't expect everybody to make the change, but we're going to take a couple people who want to volunteer. It might not work out. If you want to volunteer and be an early adopter, we're going to try. And we take 1 brick. And then we take 2 bricks. And then we take 4 bricks. Then we have a small wall and a few people who are kind of naysayers who go, oh, I guess it will work. We'll try too. And before you know it, you move the whole wall and you can't move back again because it's now the new norm. That's how change is supposed to happen. I don't believe in revolution, which is what reorgs are. They're sudden. They're usually a lot of upheaval. I believe in evolution, of which the results can be revolutionary. So, yeah. What was the question?
The leader says the right things.
Oh! When they say and do the right thing. Okay. I like my little aside, though. It goes back to the original thing. Consistency. That's right. I remember what I was going to say. Consistency, right? Which is you cannot tell if someone's a good leader by something they said once, or did once, or twice, or 3 times. Now you can kind of tell. A couple failings are okay. We don't mind that. We're patient. We're good. We know no one's perfect. As opposed to junk, 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 a couple good things, junk, 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 a couple good things. Consistency is what will make our decisions. And we're very, very attuned social animals. We're highly, highly, highly sophisticated social animals. And you kind of go, yeah, I guess he said all the right things. Like if you have that kind of sense, the odds are they're probably just saying the things you want to hear. And I agree. A lot of leaders say the right things. But the question is, will they do the right things? And the only way to truly test if they'll do the right things is when their ass is on the line, when their bonus is on the line, when their reputation is on the line, when their life is on the line. Will they save themselves or will they save us? That's the best test of all.